This is actually an interview we were scheduled to do about 3 weeks ago. I'm talking this morning with Iason Athanasiadis. Iason is a renowned photojournalist who's been in and out of Iran over the last 5 years, capturing images of life and youth culture there. He was in Tehran last month, covering the elections and the massive protests that followed. As he was leaving the country just before his visa expired, he was arrested and held in an Iranian prison for 3 weeks. Iason, I know you're back in your native Greece now, where we're talking to you over webcam this morning. Tell us what happened when you got arrested. You were at the airport, right?
So I went through the passport control. I sat at this Italian-style cafe that was right after passport control, and I started bashing out an article about what it was like leaving the story half told. And then this guy materialized to my right, just dressed in sort of cloth trousers and a shirt and a jacket, a wisp of beard on his face, quite a kind man, and he asked me if my name was Iason Fowden, which is my passport name. And I said, yes, it is. So then he said, well, please follow me. You're not going to be flying tonight.
Where were you taken? And were you held at the airport for a while? Did they take you somewhere else?
We waited for a couple of gentlemen to come from Tehran. They'd been late because of all the rioting going on, creating traffic. They just took me, they said, for a really long talk. When I asked, they were also not wearing uniforms. I decided at that point that before I left the sort of comforting recesses of a well-lit, busy airport for the very uncomforting recesses of a car with an unknown destination, I was going to get the word out that I'm being arrested. So I sat on the ground and I linked my arms into the straps of my laptop bag and my camera bag. And I said, I'm not kari nemikonam. I'm not going to collaborate with you. And they looked at me in a puzzled way. And then I started shouting, first in English and then in Persian, that I'm a reporter for the Washington Times. My name is Iason Fowden. Please contact the Greek embassy. They were pulling me and yanking me. Soon enough, I couldn't shout my message because I was getting punched in the mouth. So I was just shouting out of pain. But at that point, I noticed that the whole enormous terminal, this is a new airport, it's been built recently, and it's quite a flashy one, very high-ceilinged, vaulting kind of arches, and everybody had just gone quiet, and my voice was the only thing that was sounding in this large space.
So what prison did they take you to?
There's only one really to be taken to, and it's Evin prison. It's where a lot of the political dissidents are being held. And Evin prison was living glorious days. It had almost never been fuller since the early days of the revolution. In fact, we'd missed our slot to enter the prison because it's really high security. So we were idling away, waiting in the car park outside while these big old Mercedes buses rumbled up, stuffed to the gills, with people that had been arrested during the rioting of the evening.
Did you get to talk to some of those other political prisoners?
They must have thought I was a pretty big public enemy because I was held throughout my time there in absolute seclusion and isolation. I did hear voices from my cell, especially at meal times. I heard some pretty cultivated Persian accents. These people were not criminals or lowlife. They were certainly from good parts of society. And I even heard a young boy speaking in English at one point. He sounded very scared, possibly sort of a late teenager, early 20s, and he had an unidentifiable English accent, maybe North European, Scandinavian, or German, or American. I couldn't really tell, but the first time I heard him, he just protested to a guard, but I don't speak any Persian, because the guards didn't speak English, and so they must have been asking him something. I think this is probably someone whose disappearance has not been announced yet, and it certainly was a mystery for me as I sat in my cell who this person could be. I wanted to shout out in English, but then I didn't want to aggravate my guards.
So what were they after? I mean, why do you think? Did you say they felt you were dangerous? Why did they feel you were dangerous, and what kind of information were they after?
Well, the jailers who were taking me around, who were shuttling me around, were obviously noticing that I was a foreigner, and if I'm a foreigner, almost certainly in their head I'm going to be a spy. So because the Iranians tend to attribute supernatural powers to foreigners, not least foreign spies, they treated me with great caution. The interrogators were trying to prove a spy allegation on me. I was fascinated to see what evidence they had, because I know that I'm not a spy. I kept on saying to them, you better have something really good, because I'm not a spy and I know it, and I'm going to prove it to you. So I was worried the first day when they told me that they'd found spying equipment in my bag, because I knew there was no spying equipment, so I was worried of entrapment. And this is a fear that I've spoken recently with people since leaving jail, and they've told me that at this stage the government is rewriting history. It's rewriting the history of what happened since June 12th, and it is auditioning for characters. They really need to find characters in order to create this history.
Did you speak to them only in local languages, or did you speak English with some of them?
In the beginning, I insisted on speaking in English, but then I realized that it created a culture gulf between me and my interrogator, and really it was all about the interrogator getting to feel that he's speaking to a human being and not a prisoner. So I should switch to Persian, and that really was very nice, both for my relationship with my interrogator and also for my Persian, which has improved rapidly. Since if you can do an interrogation in a local language, I think you're doing okay.
What was the scariest moment when you were being sort of questioned, or was there something that they did that was particularly coercive?
Right at the end of my last interrogation, when they told me they believed I was innocent, when they told me that they were going to tell the judge that I should be let free, they brought out a piece of paper with spaces in it for emails, for passwords, for Skype accounts. And they said, please fill this out for your own emails and Skype accounts and all your friends, the ones that you know at least. And because freedom at that point was so close, and because they were being so positive and the atmosphere was so pleasant, I was very scared to tell them, no, I can't do this. I'm sorry, it's not right. But I did. I said, I'm sorry, this is a private issue. I didn't say it's not right because I didn't want to antagonize them. This is an issue of privacy. And because privacy is a very important concept in Islam, and they were extremely pious men, they understood what I meant.
We asked for folks to Twitter and Facebook and email questions in for you. We got some interesting responses, including from Dean Miller. Wrote, you mentioned in another interview with Small World magazine or website that you were reading the Quran while you were in prison. He wanted to know if any specific passages provided you particular comfort or strength.
I found very interesting while reading one of the surahs, the Surah Al-Nisa, the verse of the women, that it actually explained a part of my predicament, which was that they wanted to take me to court, not only for espionage, but also because I'd done some infractions of the culture. One of them was that I spent 3 evenings in the house of an unrelated female friend of mine. She had very kindly offered me to stay there because she had internet, and after I would finish my stories, I would curl up on the sofa and sleep. Obviously, we weren't in the same bed. Nevertheless, I was told that this is against Iranian law, especially if there isn't a third person there. And while reading the Quran and this surah, I realized that it says that in Islam, in order for adultery to be proven, 4 witnesses must be in the room. Now, since this is almost impossible, I then realized how Iranian law had been engineered in order to deal with this issue, and that gave me some insight into what otherwise would have been a pretty insane accusation.
Was that the only book that you could read? Were you allowed other reading material, or was it just the Quran?
The Greek ambassador brought me on his first and only visit a copy of my mother's PhD thesis at Oxford, Julian, the Emperor Julian, an intellectual biography, which is a book that, to my shame, I've never read. And he figured, being a great admirer of my mother, who's a quite well-known academic in Greece, that in jail I would probably have no option but to read it. I think she also agreed with that strategy. Fortunately or unfortunately for me, my guards decided to confiscate it. They clearly thought that the Greek writing was suspicious. Perhaps messages had been insinuated into the copy, and therefore I was never given it, unfortunately, even though I asked for it every day.
Another question is from Jill in Sacramento, who wants to know if you thought much about the 2 American journalists, Laura Ling and Eunice Lee from Current TV, who are in prison in North Korea right now.
Yeah, I thought about them a lot, especially because I was in North Korea last summer, and that is a terrifying place. Iran's Evin prison is a EU regulation accordant Austrian jail compared to the prison and labor camps of Pyongyang. The emotion of being so far away, so isolated, is terrifying. And I don't know if they speak the language, but it certainly helped me that I could communicate with my guards.
Your description of your experience in prison and your experience being interrogated, it's not North Korea.
Yeah, I mean, I had long political discussions with my interrogators who were, except for the first one who had a chip on his shoulder, they were, erudite, open-minded men, ideological, religious, absolutely wouldn't agree with them on a lot of things, but I could definitely sit there even in an interrogation cell and have fascinating discussions with them.
I'm wondering what your feelings are about where this is all heading in Iran now. I mean, yesterday we had street demonstrations where several thousand people turned out, but also there was extraordinary repression. Most
Iranians are really upset at the way in which the Islamic Republic has not ended up fulfilling their wishes of istiqlal and azadi, of independence and freedom, which was the slogan during the 1979 revolution. And I think that they want to see not the overthrow of the Islamic Republic, but its radical reform from within. This is an unprecedented political crisis. It's unprecedented because nothing like this has happened before, where the power structure of the Islamic Republic has been quite so effectively cleaved in half, with very clear support groups on both sides. Mousavi has not asked demonstrators to go home. He is not just one person. He's got the very powerful former 2 times President Ayatollah Hashemi Rafsanjani behind him. He's got an entire constellation of very specific and powerful business and political interests. And almost in a way, it could be said that the way in which the story is being reported in the West is a little bit simplistic. It's a little bit too much good against bad, because Mr. Mousavi may be an extremely erudite and intellectual man, very honorable and very respected by his countrymen, but he is most certainly a facade for a group of interests that are not quite so benign. And Mr. Ahmadinejad is a very likely hate figure because, he's short and he's not the most handsome man on earth, and he makes silly statements. But he has pushed through Iran's sovereignty in a way that is almost unrepeatable.
There's much more to explore on our website. Discuss the world and tell us what you think of our stories from a small planet at pbs.org/frontlineworld.